You finally meet someone who shows up. Like, they text when they say they will, they ask how your day was, and they actually sit there and listen to the answer.
Mm.
There are no games, no decoding, no lying awake at 2 in the morning, staring at the ceiling, just wondering where you stand. And instead of feeling relieved, you feel, I don't know, restless, a little flat.
Right. Maybe even vaguely suspicious.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Suspicious. It's like it's 4:40 on a Tuesday afternoon and there is absolutely nothing wrong.
Yeah.
The house is quiet, the text messages are kind, the plans for the weekend are totally secure. You have the exact calm you begged the universe for. But it feels like the oxygen is just being slowly vacuumed out of the room.
It's a profoundly disorienting experience.
It really is. It feels like the pause before a horror movie jump scare. So what do? You take a fight over the way a dishwasher was loaded.
Right. Or you go completely emotionally cold, just freezing them out, and you don't even know why.
Yeah, or, this is perhaps the most brutal version, you find yourself at midnight just scrolling the social media of someone who used to make you cry twice a week. Because you secretly miss the feeling of the sun coming out when they finally barely paid attention to you.
Which creates a terrible loop of self-judgment,
Yeah.
You look at the situation, you see that everything you asked for is sitting right in front of you.
Right.
And yet your internal landscape is just bracing for an impact that isn't coming. The paradox of getting exactly what you asked for and then realizing your body fundamentally does not know what to do with it.
Because emotionally, like from a lived-in perspective, it feels like this steady situation is just lacking chemistry. It feels like a swamp.
Yeah.
Like stagnation, like you've hit a ceiling and the spark, that undeniable consuming spark is just gone. And it feels like you are fiercely protecting yourself because getting close to this quiet person means letting your guard down.
And letting your guard down means getting destroyed.
Exactly. Or maybe you start telling yourself a narrative. You convince yourself that you just aren't meant for a boring life. You're like, I am a passionate person. I need the fireworks.
But if we look at the biological, research-driven reality beneath that narrative, this isn't a lack of chemistry at all.
No.
No, it's a nervous system that learned its job far too well. It's a body that is actively pattern matching for a threat, coming up totally empty, and mistaking the absence of anxiety for an absence of love.
Wow.
The biological hardware is sounding an alarm, specifically because the environment is too safe.
If you like sitting with questions that don't resolve easily, you're in the right place.
We are holding two very real, very honest readings of the exact same human moment here. The emotional terror of being known and the biological terror of a quiet room.
Okay, let's unpack this because we're looking at something often called relationship sabotage, or what the researcher and author Gay Hendricks brilliantly termed the upper limit problem in his book, The Big Leap. The core concept he presents is that every single one of us has an inner thermostat setting. And this thermostat determines exactly how much love, how much success, and how much unadulterated joy we allow ourselves to actually experience before we feel fundamentally unsafe.
The thermostat analogy is incredibly precise, actually, because a thermostat is a self-regulating mechanism.
Right.
It does not possess morality. It doesn't care if you are a good person who deserves to be warm. If the room is programmed for 68 degrees and the temperature rises to 75 because someone lit a beautiful fire in the hearth, the system does not celebrate the warmth.
It registers an error.
Exactly. A mechanism violently kicks in to cool things back down to baseline.
So we blow past that internal setting because, we get a promotion, or we fall in love with someone healthy, or we just have 3 consecutive days where nothing goes wrong.
Yeah.
And the moment we hit 75 degrees, we unconsciously do something to tank the temperature. We drop back into a familiar chilly zone. We turn down the volume on the positive feeling because the positive feeling has crossed a threshold into feeling dangerous.
Psychologically speaking, viewing this as a character flaw or a moral failing is where most people get trapped. They think they're broken.
Oh, totally.
But behaviorally, what we are observing is a highly complex mix of positive and negative reinforcement, almost always conditioned from early childhood.
Right.
The sabotage is a protective maneuver. You are negatively reinforcing your fears of imperfection or abandonment. You're basically taking a preemptive action to protect yourself from a perceived threat, even if that threat is merely the unfamiliarity of feeling good.
I want to talk directly to you listening to this for a second. Why do you keep reaching for the drama when it doesn't even feel good anymore?
Yeah.
You know the exact physical sensation of reaching for your phone to start a conflict. You can feel the tightness in your chest. Logically, that sending that accusatory text is going to give you absolutely nothing you actually like.
Right.
You do not enjoy the fight. You do not enjoy the pit in your stomach or the sleepless night that follows. So why do it?
That intense disconnect between what you want and what you do is neurological. The wanting circuit and the liking circuit in the human brain are completely distinct pathways.
Interesting.
And they are not reporting to the same office. You can logically, rationally want a calm life. You can sit on a therapist's couch and articulate a beautiful vision of a steady, supportive partner. But your body, your nervous system, is craving a familiar stimulus.
It is craving the chaos it knows how to survive.
Exactly. Willpower alone rarely fixes this because a plan built only on logic is addressing the wrong circuit entirely. Your wanting outruns your liking.
Okay, I hear the biology of that, but I have to push back here. What if it is just a bad relationship? What if it's not some grand, intricate web of self-sabotage? There's a very real concept of relational stagnation, where steady actually just means dead.
That's a fair point.
Like, the marriage is technically intact, the mortgage is paid, no one is throwing plates against the wall, but the relationship has quietly, tragically stopped growing. How do you know you're self-sabotaging versus just waking up to the ambient grief of a lifeless partnership?
Yeah.
That Sunday afternoon flatness might not be a broken thermostat. It might just be a brutally accurate read on a suffocating situation. And honestly, it is terrifying to think we can't trust our own intuition. If my gut says run and my therapist says that's just your upper limit problem, how do I know my gut isn't trying to save my life?
That terror of losing trust in your own internal compass is profound, and it is entirely why we have to ground this distinction in attachment theory. John Bowlby, the foundational psychiatrist behind attachment theory, established something crucial that often gets misunderstood.
Yeah.
Secure attachment is never just passive comfort. It is not two people sitting silently on a beige couch for 50 years until they die. Secure attachment is an active, dynamic base for exploration.
It's the launch pad, the runway.
Exactly that. It is the internal safe base from which a person can venture outward, take risks, grow, create, and explore the world, knowing they have a harbor to return to.
Right.
If that exploration stops entirely, if the relationship becomes a bunker instead of a launch pad and there is zero growth, the nervous system accurately registers that stagnation as a threat.
Wow.
We are meant to grow.
Yeah.
So your pushback is vital because sometimes the flatness is a real screaming signal of relational death. But the distinguishing factor is what happens when things are genuinely expanding.
So when things are going well.
Yes, when you are growing, when the affection is deep and active, and suddenly you feel an overwhelming, inexplicable urge to burn the house down, that is the biological hardware misfiring.
What's fascinating here is how we can map that misfire physically. It is not just a metaphor. If we look at Dr. Stephen Porges's Polyvagal Theory, it strips away the poetry and explains the brutal mechanics of why calm feels dangerous to certain bodies.
Yes, Porges revolutionized how we understand trauma by mapping the autonomic nervous system, the ANS. He showed that it isn't just a simple toggle switch between stressed and relaxed.
Right.
It operates in three distinct, hierarchical levels of safety developed over millions of years of evolutionary history.
The vagus nerve is the star of this theory, the 10th cranial nerve. It literally wanders through the body, from the brainstem all the way down through the chest and into the abdomen. It connects the mind to the viscera.
Yeah.
It is the physical highway for that gut feeling we just talked about.
And that highway has different lanes depending on how safe we feel.
Yeah.
The newest, most evolved system in our biology is the social engagement system, which is run by the ventral vagal pathway. This is unique to mammals. It connects our heart to the muscles of our face, our throat, and our middle ear. It is the mechanism by which we connect, use microfacial expressions, soothe each other with the melodic tone of our voice, and regulate our internal states through mutual social interaction.
Right. It's always our first line of defense.
Yes. When a mammal is in distress, it doesn't immediately attack. It looks for help. It seeks a warm, regulating face.
That's the moment you walk into a crowded room, feel overwhelmed, and scan the crowd for the one friend you know. You catch their eye, they give you a soft smile, and you can literally feel your shoulders drop an inch. That is the ventral vagal system working perfectly. Like, I am not alone, I am safe.
But if the environment isn't safe, or if that help simply isn't available, say if the parent was historically absent or the partner is volatile, the body abandons that newest system and drops down a level. It engages the sympathetic nervous system.
The classic fight or flight.
Exactly. Mobilization against a threat. The ventral vagal brakes come off, your heart rate spikes, adrenaline and cortisol flood your bloodstream, blood rushes to your limbs, and you are prepared to either run for your life or throw a punch.
You are highly activated. You are pacing the floor. You are screaming. You are packing a bag.
Precisely. But consider what happens when neither fighting nor running is an option. If you are a child trapped in a chaotic household, or if you're in an inescapable, deeply overwhelming situation, the sympathetic system eventually exhausts itself or realizes it cannot win.
So what happens then?
Then we drop down to the oldest, most ancient system we possess, the dorsal vagal pathway. This is the reptilian system. This is freeze or collapse, immobilization. When danger is absolutely inescapable, the body drops its metabolic rate to preserve energy and minimize pain. You shut down, you dissociate, you go numb.
Like the possum playing dead. The prey going limp in the jaws of the predator, just hoping the predator loses interest. And the terrifying part of Porges' theory is that the mechanism deciding which of these three systems to use is not a conscious choice.
No, not at all.
Like, I am not sitting on my couch on a Tuesday afternoon thinking, let's see, should I deploy my ventral vagal system or go straight to dorsal vagal collapse right now?
Right. It occurs entirely beneath the threshold of conscious awareness, through a process Porges termed neuroception.
Neuroception.
Yes,
Here.
neuroception is a primal radar. It is the automatic subconscious detection of safety or danger in the environment. It reads the subtle intention behind a shift in vocal tone, the tightening of muscles around someone's eyes, the ambient noise in a room.
So before your conscious brain has even registered that your partner sighed, your neuroception has already evaluated whether that sigh means they are tired or whether it means they are preparing to leave you.
Exactly. And for someone who grew up in chaos or survived a traumatic environment, that radar gets entirely recalibrated. The neurosection becomes faulty. It develops a heavy bias toward assuming danger, because assuming danger kept you alive in the past. It detects a massive catastrophic risk when there is absolutely none. Or, in a cruel twist, it identifies safety in the midst of extreme familiar danger, because that chaos is a language the nervous system knows how to speak.
Which seamlessly introduces the concept of allostatic load, coined by neuroendocrinologist Bruce McEwen. Allostatic load refers to the cumulative physiological wear and tear of chronic stress on the body.
Right.
If you force a human body to adapt to instability again and again, say, growing up in a house where the mood flips on a dime, where a slamming door could mean nothing or could mean violence, the body does not just bounce back to a neutral zero.
It doesn't.
It eventually resets its fundamental idea of normal around that elevated state of vigilance. The baseline shifts permanently upward.
The analogy in the research that made my jaw drop was the smoke detector.
Oh, yeah, the
Yeah.
smoke detector.
Imagine a high-end smoke detector installed in a kitchen where the cook is incredibly reckless. The kitchen catches on fire every single week for 10 years. That smoke detector is constantly blaring. It is overworked,
Yep.
always on high alert.
Right.
Now imagine you unscrewed that exact same smoke detector and install it in the hallway of a quiet, peaceful, incredibly boring house where nothing has burned in decades. The smoke detector does not look around and say, finally I can relax.
It cannot relax because its internal settings have been warped by its history.
Exactly.
Yeah.
A strangely quiet room can actually trip the alarm. The absolute silence feels like a trick because it is actively, aggressively listening for the pattern of smoke it was built around. When the silence drags on, the smoke detector assumes the fire must be hidden, burning inside the walls.
Wow. Add to that shifted baseline the psychological trait that Marvin Zuckerman identified as sensation-seeking.
Yes.
This is a trait-level drive for intense, novel, high-arousal experiences. For some nervous systems, particularly those habituated to chaos, ordinary life physically feels understimulating.
Yeah, they literally require a massive dose of stimulation before an experience even registers as satisfying or real to their brain.
Yeah.
To a sensation seeker with a high allostatic load, calm doesn't read as neutral, and it certainly doesn't read as peaceful.
No. Calm reads as a terrifying deficit that absolutely must be filled with action.
Exactly.
So we have this brilliant, complex hardware just trying to keep us alive, but the emotional experience of the upper limit problem, the heart of the matter, feels so intensely personal. It feels completely tied to our core identity.
It does.
When you sabotage a beautiful evening with someone you love, you don't sit there and think, oh, my vagus nerve is acting up, or my allostatic load is heavy today.
Right.
You sit there with a deep, sinking, nauseating feeling of, I am broken. I do not deserve this love. I am a monster.
We attach a devastating psychological narrative to a biological survival response. We create a story to make sense of the sudden drop in temperature.
Yes. Gay Hendricks maps out 4 specific hidden barriers that keep our internal thermostat set artificially low. These are the deep, unconscious stories we tell ourselves to justify why we cannot handle the peace, the success, or the intimacy. The first barrier is the feeling of being fundamentally flawed.
This is the pervasive belief that if people were to truly, clearly see you, without the achievements, without the charm, without the utility you provide, they would realize you are an imposter and they would be repulsed.
And the sources outline the story of Carl, an incredibly successful executive. Carl was brilliant. He was climbing the ladder faster than anyone in his firm, but he could never actually enjoy his own brilliant ideas.
Yeah.
Every single time he had a major, undeniable success, like a massive presentation that went flawlessly, a huge account landed, he would unconsciously sabotage it. He would leave an incredibly important document on an airplane. He would send a wildly abrasive, inappropriate email to a superior the very next morning. Why? Because deep down, beneath the suits and the salary, Carl held a pervasive, agonizing feeling that something was fundamentally, inherently wrong with him.
Yeah.
If you truly believe you are flawed at your core, then massive success or pure unconditional love feels like an administrative error. It feels like a mistake that you have to correct before you get found out.
You correct the mistake by destroying the success, thereby proving your core belief true. Like, see?
Yeah.
I am a mess. I knew it. The second hidden barrier is disloyalty.
Yeah.
Specifically, the profound fear of abandoning your roots.
Oh, this one is staggering for anyone who has outgrown their family's dynamic, their hometown, or their socioeconomic status.
Absolutely.
Hendricks details the story of Robert and Dee. They are newlyweds. They just got back from this spectacular romantic honeymoon in Italy. Sunsets, incredible food, deep connection. Everything is picture perfect. They land, they get in the cab, they walk through the front door of their home, and almost immediately, before the suitcases are even unpacked, they get into a massive, nasty, character-assassinating feat.
Over nothing.
Over where to put a pair of shoes. Why did they do that? Because unconsciously, they both felt an immense, crushing guilt for having a better marriage, a happier life than their parents ever did.
The guilt acts as an emergency brake on their joy. They come from lineages of miserable marriages. To be blissfully happy feels like a betrayal of their parents' suffering. It feels like leaving their tribe behind.
So they artificially recreate the misery of their childhood homes in their own living room just to feel a sense of belonging again. Barrier 3 is similar. It's the belief that you are a burden.
Right.
This is the thought that the more successful, the more expansive, the happier you are, the bigger burden you become to the people around you. You start believing your joy is exhausting to others. And the fourth barrier, which is fascinating, is the fear of outshining. You desperately do not want to make other people feel bad by being too brilliant, too talented, or too loved.
The literature points to Kenny and Jim, two brothers who are singers, struggling immensely with this specific dynamic.
Kenny was a generational talent, but his entire career was a series of bizarre setbacks. He would literally get physically sick, lose his voice, or have a clumsy accident right after winning a major award or securing a hit song.
Wow.
He was utterly terrified of outshining his sibling, Jim, who was struggling in the same industry. Kenny's body would clunkily do him a favor by taking him down a peg. It's all intimately connected to this underlying feeling of being too much.
Yes.
From a very young age, we are taught to shrink. We learn that our big emotions, our needs, our brilliance are a burden to tired parents. We construct a cage to keep ourselves small and manageable. So when someone finally comes along, looks inside the cage, actually sees the entirety of us and wants to stay, every alarm bell in the body goes off. The internal monologue screams. If they actually knew the real overwhelming me, they'd leave in a heartbeat. I better push them away right now before they get the chance to abandon me.
More people carry both sides of this than you'd think. The biological drive to seek the familiar chaos and the emotional terror of being truly fully seen.
We have to talk about how this actually manifests in real life because it isn't always as obvious as throwing a suitcase across a room. Let's look at pattern number 1. Romantic sabotage.
Oh, absolutely.
The dating world is an absolute unmitigated minefield for the upper limit problem. You meet someone genuinely great, they're kind, consistent, and interested, and suddenly you execute the preemptive strike.
Yeah.
You feel yourself getting attached, your thermostat registers that the room is getting too warm, and because attachment feels incredibly dangerous, you go completely cold. You ghost them, or you start giving one-word answers. You tell your friends, I'm just being fiercely independent, I don't need anyone.
Yeah.
But the reality, you're frantically protecting a heart that learned a very long time ago that proximity equals pain.
Or, rather than pulling away completely, you deploy the impossible standard. You
Yeah.
stay in the dynamic, but you ensure the other person can never, ever win.
Oh, this one is ruthless, and I think everyone has either done it or been on the receiving end of it. You meet someone kind, and suddenly you are building a meticulous, ironclad legal case against them based on absolute vapor.
Yes.
You decide you hate their texting habits, you analyze a text message where they said sure instead of course, and you spin a massive narrative that this proves they lack emotional depth and don't care about you. You convince yourself the way they chew their food is a moral failing.
Which is wild.
You aren't genuinely bothered by these things. You are unconsciously, desperately constructing an exit strategy. Because a story that ends with, "it won't work because he texts weird," is a much safer, much more comfortable story than facing the terrifying vulnerability of, what if it does work? What if I let them in and then they leave?
And then there is the ultimate expression of romantic sabotage. The test.
Wow, the test.
This is where you actively act out. You become intentionally distant, demanding, unreasonable, or difficult, specifically to see if they will abandon you. You push them to the absolute limit.
Yeah.
If they finally throw up their hands and leave, it provides a twisted sense of relief because it confirms your core wound. See, I knew I was too much. Everyone goes eventually.
Right.
But the real danger is if they stay. If they pass the test and remain calm and loving, the stakes get infinitely higher. The anxiety spikes to unbearable levels because now you have something incredibly real and incredibly precious to lose.
You brought up the biology of this earlier, the stress hormones and the dopamine. How does this cycle directly tie into trauma bonding? Because trauma bond is a term that gets thrown around constantly on the internet, often completely incorrectly, just to describe a bad boyfriend.
It is deeply misunderstood. A trauma bond isn't just about having an attachment to someone who is mean to you. It is a highly specific, very powerful neurochemical cycle.
Mm-hmm.
The bond forms because of the extreme highs and the extreme lows.
Okay.
In a chaotic, volatile relationship, the cycle begins with tension. Then comes the rupture, the screaming match, the silent treatment, the cruel words. During that rupture, your brain is flooded with cortisol and adrenaline. You are in a state of severe hyperarousal. You feel like you might die from the heartbreak.
Yeah.
Then eventually comes the repair, the tearful apology, the passionate reunion, the promises that it will never happen again. When that repair happens, your brain gets a massive, overwhelming flood of dopamine and oxytocin, the ultimate reward chemicals.
It's quite literally a chemical roller coaster.
It is an addiction loop, identical in mechanism to gambling or substance dependence. Over time, the immense relief of reconnection after a terrifying conflict produces a chemical hit that a calm, steady, consistent affection simply cannot replicate.
Right.
Peace doesn't offer the crushing lows, which means it cannot offer the euphoric, dopamine-soaked highs of the repair.
Yeah.
So, you meet someone healthy, and you mistake the absence of anxiety for a lack of chemistry. You tell your friends there's just no spark.
Yeah, but what you were calling a spark in your past relationships was actually just your nervous system recognizing a deeply familiar, highly addictive threat.
Exactly.
Let's pivot and look at your career, too. This isn't just about romance and dating. Pattern number 2 is hustle culture and the driven persona.
Mm-hmm.
If you are listening to this, I want you to look closely at how you operate in your professional life. Do you constantly overwork yourself? Do you burn out repeatedly, recover just enough to function, and then dive right back into the fire? Do you find that you only produce your best work or only feel alive under immense, crushing pressure? Do you refuse to take a single day off because resting on a beach literally feels like a risk to your survival?
This is where we have to expand our view and look at the systemic lens. We cannot just blame the individual. Hustle culture actively, monetarily applauds and rewards nervous system dysregulation.
Break that down. How does corporate culture reward trauma?
Think about a woman whose nervous system runs incredibly hot because she grew up managing childhood chaos. She is constantly in a state of hypervigilance. She anticipates problems before they happen. She cannot sit still.
Right.
In a modern corporate environment, she doesn't get pulled aside and told, you seem overwhelmed, you need to slow down and heal your nervous system. She gets promoted.
Because her absolute inability to sit still in a quiet office on a Friday afternoon is read by her boss as relentless ambition.
She becomes the crisis manager. Workplaces built around always-on availability treat rest as highly suspicious, and they treat frantic busyness as undeniable proof of worth. So her dysregulation is systemically rewarded. She gets bonuses and praise for answering emails at 3:20 a.m. and for never taking a vacation. This makes it incredibly profoundly difficult for her to view her extreme chaos tolerance as a biological cost rather than a moral virtue.
Wow.
She is fighting a massive cultural headwind to heal because society is literally paying her a very high salary to remain in a state of perpetual dysregulation.
It's the monetization of hyperarousal.
Oh.
And then there's the everyday mundane sabotage. Pattern number 3. Hendricks lists these highly specific upper limit behaviors we use to knock ourselves down when things get just a little too good.
Yeah.
Worrying is a massive one. Have you ever had a perfect day and suddenly you are obsessing over whether you left the stove on or stressing over a completely harmless, innocuous email you sent 3 days ago?
Totally.
It's a cognitive mechanism to retard the flow of positive energy. You cannot tolerate the pure joy, so you introduce a microdose of anxiety to bring the temperature back down.
Criticism and blame operate the exact same way. You manufacture a conspiracy or a conflict specifically to avoid intimacy.
The classic example is from the movie Annie Hall. Woody Allen's character and his wife are in the bedroom. The lighting is soft. The mood is perfect. It is a moment primed for deep intimacy.
Right.
And what does he do? He starts frantically pacing the room, aggressively ranting about the Kennedy assassination conspiracy. He is completely destroying the intimacy of the moment by hyper-fixating on an unsolvable external conflict. He is upper limiting the connection.
Or squabbling.
Yeah.
The example of Sarah and Jonah in the sources is perfect.
Oh, the couple running the business together who fought right after the earnings report?
Yes. They had just received their best ever quarterly earnings report. It was a massive, life-changing success. They had achieved everything they worked for.
Yeah.
And almost immediately, within minutes of popping the champagne, they fall into a bitter, nasty, deeply personal squabble over something entirely trivial. They didn't even realize they were doing it until a consultant pointed it out.
They upper limited their massive celebration by manufacturing a fight. They couldn't hold the joy, so they replaced it with familiar anger. And perhaps the strangest upper limit behavior, getting sick or hurt.
Yeah, that one always surprises people.
Getting a random, inexplicable stomachache or losing your voice or stubbing your toe the exact second things go perfectly. It sounds absurd, but it is your unconscious mind's incredibly clunky physical way of forcing you to take a break from the overwhelming positive emotion.
And we must recognize how deeply and how wildly differently the body keeps the score when it comes to trauma and these protective patterns.
Right.
There is a profound, illuminating example in the psychiatric literature regarding a devastating multi-car pileup on the 402 highway in a dense fog bank.
Stan and Yuho, the story is incredible.
Yes, a couple trapped in a horrific, massive pileup, twisted metal screaming absolute terror. Years later, they were put into functional MRI machines, and brain scans showed how radically different their survival patterns were, despite experiencing the exact same event. When asked to recall the accident in the scanner, Stan panicked. He screamed. His heart rate exploded on the monitor. His blood pressure spiked dangerously high. He went into massive hyperarousal. The sympathetic nervous system took over entirely, exactly as it did on the highway.
He was stuck in fight or flight. He was reliving the terror.
But Yute's brain did the exact opposite. When asked to recall the crushing impact, her brain completely dissociated. In the scanner, her heart rate stayed perfectly flat. Her blood pressure didn't move a single point.
That's wild.
When researchers asked her what she was feeling, she reported feeling absolutely nothing. A complete void.
Depersonalization, the dorsal vagal collapse we talked about earlier.
Exactly. The researchers dug into her history and found that as a child, she had an abusive, intensely demanding mother. Her only viable survival mechanism back then as a small child was to mentally disappear, to go completely numb, to leave her body.
Right.
Decades later, in that crushed car on the highway, facing inescapable terror, her brain bypassed panic entirely and utilized the exact same ancient defense pathway it learned in childhood.
Wow.
It shows how profoundly different our survival patterns can be. The body defaults to the specific shield it built when we were young, whether that shield is fighting, running, or turning to stone.
So what does this all mean? We have this heavy, intricate knowledge about our brains and our trauma. How do we actually live with this once we recognize it in ourselves?
Yeah.
The first step, and I think it is the absolute most important one, is aggressively removing the shame. If you are listening to this and recognizing yourself in Carl or Robert or the woman addicted to hustle culture, you are not broken.
Not at all.
You are not a self-sabotaging monster. Wanting peace and flinching from it are not contradictions that cancel each other out.
They are both completely true.
They are running on entirely different tracks in the exact same body. You can desperately, genuinely crave a steady life and still feel your chest tighten and your throat close up the moment you actually get it.
This is where we introduce the arduous but beautiful concept of recalibration. When true healing begins, when you step out of the chaos and commit to a safe environment, your stress hormones, the cortisol, the adrenaline, finally start to level out.
Right.
The baseline lowers. You aren't getting those massive addictive chemical spikes anymore. And because of that, emotions might initially feel incredibly muted. You aren't crying on the bathroom floor anymore, but you aren't manic with euphoric joy either. Life starts to feel boring.
And that boredom is utterly terrifying because it feels like you're losing your edge. It feels like you are losing your capacity to feel deeply. You start wondering if you are dead inside.
But here's the critical advice, the translation for the listener. The next time you are sitting across a table from a safe, consistent, kind person, and you think to yourself, I just don't feel it, or there's no chemistry, I want you to pause and get intensely, rigorously curious. Ask yourself, is there genuinely no warmth here? Is there truly no intellectual interest, no shared values, no ease? Or is there just no nervous system activation? Is there just no tension for you to hold on to? Are you confusing safety with a lack of passion?
We have to fundamentally reframe the concept of boredom. This is not a regression. You are not going backward. You are not settling. It is regulation. The feeling you are calling boredom is literally your body's way of finally saying, we are safe now, we can put down the weapon.
We've been sold a lie by movies and literature that healing is a cinematic moment of fireworks. It rarely is. Real healing happens in the quiet, repetitive, mundane moments.
Right.
It is the active choice not to text someone who drains you, just to feel hit of familiar drama. It is taking a deep breath instead of reacting to a perceived slight. It is the incredibly difficult active practice of tolerating the intense physical discomfort of being safe. And it involves building pleasure gradually.
Because your body has to relearn safety through gentle, consistent pleasure, not through pressure or high-stakes intensity.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, beyond the dating apps and the boardrooms,
What do we find?
we find that beneath the addiction to chaos, beneath the upper limits and the clever self-sabotage, beneath the impossible standards we set for our partners, there is a profound, ambient grief.
A grief for what?
Grief for the consistent, unconditional love that you did not receive as a child. When you look at these patterns clearly, without judgment, you see that they are not character flaws. They are the highly sensible, incredibly effective defenses of a child doing the absolute best they could to survive in an unpredictable, overwhelming world.
Wow.
The tragedy is that the armor you built to survive your childhood is now the exact thing preventing you from enjoying your adulthood.
And that ties so deeply into the core of our identity. Who are you if you aren't managing a crisis? If you have spent your entire life from the time you were 7 years old being the one who fixes things, the one who anticipates the explosion, the one who reads the room perfectly and walks on eggshells so the house doesn't burn down, who are you when the house is finally fireproof?
It is terrifying to lay down the only identity that ever kept you safe. It feels like an ego death.
I keep picturing this analogy. Imagine you have worn a heavy, thick coat of iron armor your entire life because you were born in the middle of a brutal blizzard.
Yeah.
The wind was howling, the ice was biting, and the sheer weight of that armor was the only thing keeping you grounded and alive. Then, one day, you finally stumble through a doorway and step inside a warm, quiet, deeply safe house. There is a fire in the hearth. There is no wind. Taking off that iron armor doesn't feel like relief at first. It feels absolutely terrifying.
Because without the weight of the iron, you feel naked, exposed, and vulnerable to an attack you are certain must be coming. You keep reaching for the heavy metal because its oppressive weight is the only sensory input that tells you that you actually exist.
Right.
You don't know how to move without the resistance of the iron pushing back against you.
Exactly. The lightness feels like gravity has failed. So I want to say this directly to you, the person listening to this right now, perhaps sitting in that strangely quiet room. You are allowed to let the floor be solid beneath you. You do not have to constantly check the corners for trapdoors.
Yeah.
You are allowed to be loved without having to earn it through immense suffering or perfect performance. You have survived the blizzard. You do not have to brace for impact anymore.
If this conversation felt true for you, both sides of it, you're always welcome here. You can subscribe to Leone Patterns and keep sitting with us.
We've looked at this incredibly difficult human experience through two powerful lenses today. We have the emotional, felt reality. Your heart is terrified of being fully known, terrified of outshining others, and terrified of being a burden.
Right.
And alongside that, we have the biological reality. Your nervous system is literally physically wired to sound high decibel alarms when your environment gets too quiet, because quiet used to mean danger.
Neither side is the winner. They are both true, they are both happening at exactly the same time, and they both require immense, relentless compassion to navigate.
It takes so much unbelievable courage to just sit still in a quiet room with someone who is genuinely kind to you and actively manually stop yourself from burning the room down. It is the hardest, quietest, least glamorous work you can possibly do.
And it is testament to the biological miracle of the human body. Your body fought so incredibly hard to keep you alive in the chaos. It did its job perfectly. And with patience, grace, and time, it can absolutely learn to keep you alive in the peace.
Same pace, same questions. See you then.